Well, hello everybody, and happy Saturday to you. Thank you for getting here and being here to listen to these two lovely people. I have Robert Brunges from Attune. I
Akashic.
got it here. Akashic Attunement, and I have put his information not only in the chat, but I've also put it on when this is over. So if you're interested in having a reading, you can reach him. And I also have my dear friend Anne Marie here from Angel Star Karma, who works, as most of you know, with astrological karma and also starseed karma or information, I would say. So welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I would be remiss in not mentioning that none of us probably would have heard of Bob had we not had him show up on Andrea at Lilac Lantern, and just totally fascinate us. I always give credit where credit is due, and she was the first. She found Bob and brought him to us all. And then I think you've been on Nancy Jean's show and Danny's show. Am I right?
I did a reading for Danny, but I haven't been on his show.
Oh, okay.
But he talks very highly of you.
Oh, yes. Gosh, they all do. Scott does.
That's true. Everybody does.
Ron, Unconditional Love, does. Yeah. And of course, I've had a reading, and so has Anne Marie.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do want to tell you a little bit about how this works today, because in order for Bob to read you, he goes through a ritual sort of way of opening up your Akashic records. And because everybody's Akash is their personal record base, and also it takes time to get to that place where he can read you, he's not doing that for you this morning because it simply is too long a process. And plus, this is a public forum. And so, if you're interested, I have provided you information so that you can have it done personally with him. And I believe, although I didn't have you, for some stupid reason, I didn't have you tape mine. You can do it, right? You can tape it on Zoom. Yeah.
That's very much so. And when we Zoom, you have the opportunity oftentimes to actually record the session on your own device.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about, shifting the thing. I see here one of your friends is here, Mary Myers, and she had written to me today and said she was going to be here. So that's great. Welcome, everyone.
Actually, it was Mary Myers that introduced me to Andrea. So.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Mary Myers. Yeah.
Yeah, nice to see you, Mary. I've actually been working with Mary for about 12 or 13 years.
Oh, wow.
And I don't want to imply that Mary has a lot of questions or confusions or problems. Her life purpose has put her on a path of working with many different people. And so she has consulted with me over time and how she can best do that and kind of optimize kind of what she can bring to the table. So great stuff.
I love that. Yes. Well, thank you, Mary, for introducing Bob to Andrea and to us all. I certainly most appreciate that. Yes. So I've been waiting for this for a long time. Some of the things that you were able to tell me during my own reading profoundly impacted the way I look at things. I had a lot of fears I had no understanding of, or what the base of that reading gave me that information. And also my interest in the Essenes showed up as me being in a scene. So wow, it was really great. It was really wonderful. Do you want to share anything, Anne Marie? It's up to you.
I was fascinated to find out that, well, my main question for Bob was, with my interest and passion in astrology, why am I so fascinated with the past? Most people look at astrology to figure out the future.
Right.
And he helped me come to the realization that to understand our past is the best way for us to be able to move forward and to, learning from that past record and move forward. But he also told me that I did astrology in Atlantis, and that I termed it like an HR director. You told me that I like helped people figure out what their role should be by looking at their charts. And I thought that was really pretty cool. So that's helped me realize that I'm remembering astrology instead of learning it.
I'm learning it again. Yeah.
That's very true. I mean, many of the light workers that are listening to your channel, Allie, have kind of mastered some of the skill sets that they're bringing forward now to bring light to the planet and to other people and that type of a thing. And so it's kind of, to some extent or a large extent, it is remembering these things that we've already earned.
Yeah.
Right.
And I say earned because it's earned as well as learned before. So.
Oh, I like that.
What
yes.
we've
I agree.
Before, we've earned that and we own it. It's in our Akash. So.
Right. When you go into the Akash, Robert, do you see like a library? You said you see mostly a lot of images. That's how you interpret?
Yeah, I don't see a library. A library is a nice, neat, linear 3D thing. And the Akash is it's an energetic, divine, non-linear energy. And so I rely heavily on the masters, teachers, and loved ones for that person that I'm doing the reading with. And they bring forward images, and that's what I see. But the Akash is all about energy, and so there is an energy associated with that image, and that provides a meaning, and that's what I bring forward. So it begins to explain the situation. So
it really does, and I mean, many people who are psychic or also are mediums have the same type. I think you're explaining that as. So do you consider yourself to be one of those as well, or you just stick strictly to what it is you do?
The Akash might be a little bit different than a psychic reading. A psychic reading might be more of a kind of a snapshot in time. Once I have opened your Akash, it becomes an interactive dialogue. So we can get down to a root issue. So for example, if there are those things that you might fear in the lifetime, we can begin to explore why that. It may be a trauma within your Akash. And so where does that come from? So.
I think it would be wonderful if there was a way that we could read the Akash as a collective or as a community, like maybe look for where we've all been together before. Although I don't really think we need that validation because we all feel so comfortable here. It just would be really cool. And I'm guessing it would be probably a community like Lemuria or Atlantis or something like that.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think I don't believe that we existed in the duality that we do now in Lemuria. Yeah. So as it turns out, at some point in our history, we decided to experience duality. And I have a feeling that it goes back about 26,000 years.
Okay.
At the time, basically, of the last incarnation of Atlantis. So that we would be incarnating here, and they want to create this dual environment. So we were not necessarily cognizant of the nature of our real being and the grander reality on the other side of the veil. So
it just seems like.
But you bring up a really good point, and that is that everybody does have the ability to read their own records.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, it's an energy that's actually resident in the 8th layer of our ethereal DNA. So it's an energy that is literally resident in every cell of our body. So, and as we move forward in the new energy and we begin to activate various levels of our DNA, what you suggested is really going to be powerful. So, and I think people are getting that feeling and they're getting that experience now. So they're beginning to have more past life memories and so on. Might not necessarily be clear, but they're beginning to have those experiences with the activation of their DNA in our new energy. So it's one way that the veil is becoming more transparent, which is all good news.
Yes, it is good news.
I attribute
Yesterday,
that to the, I'm sorry.
no, go.
I attribute some of that to the energies of the planets and the alignments that, are occurring now that haven't occurred before, and or in many, 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 many years. And so those energies are triggering things. And as we're starting to focus more on our galaxy and looking up, we're opening up to those star codes and everything and waking up the memories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In 2012, from an astronomical standpoint, we are in a position that we haven't been in relative to the central blue sun for 26,000 years.
Yeah.
So it is a new alignment.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that energy shift that you were able to feel in the Akash starting sometime around 2012, as you say.
Well, it actually goes back quite a bit. Oh,
Further? Okay.
yeah, I mentioned the Akash is recalibrating.
Right.
So in the past, it has been very planetary oriented. And people have asked me, am I a starseed? The answer is yes. But I wasn't necessarily able to connect with where they're from. And so I'm able to do that now, just simply due to the fact that there's kind of an expansion within the Akash. So the other thing that's happening is that karma will play less and less of a role in our lifetime as we move into the new energy. So right now, sometimes karma will be pushing us around. It might be something we did in a past life. It's an energetic burden that we take on. And so we want to balance that. And so it kind of pushes us around in this lifetime. So
right.
We're going to be leaving that behind.
Yeah.
I like that idea very much. I don't know if I like that idea for people who actually, quote, deserve the karma. I don't know how to say it in a nice way. There's a lot of people out there that aren't very nice to other people. And I always say, well, be careful, the karma bus is on its way. But, I also need to know that I'm not in charge. I'm not in charge of any of this. It's all done by the divine. So, but I think that would be nice. It'd be nice if we really listened to our intuition too. And in knowing what our past life karma was, we can still work on those things just to, I guess, uplift us into a higher dimensional energy, can't we?
Yeah, there are different ways in which we can resolve karma. The primary way is to work with the people that we have created that kind of burden with and created that imbalance with.
Uh-huh.
So most souls, I think what they do is they simply reincarnate with that person again. They set up a path that's going to bring up similar issues. And at that moment in time, whatever those circumstances or event is, they have the opportunity to step up to the plate and to change and to grow.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes they don't. I mean, we have free will.
Right.
So sometimes that'll happen and sometimes it won't.
So I think sometimes that there's a deep forgetting of what it, and that's obviously why you and Anne-Marie do what you do as well, because it's important for us to remember what it was, in order to fix it. Like you say, maybe it's bringing somebody in or resolving a relationship in this time that was problematic in the past. Maybe it's a lesson in health or a lesson in things, other relationships. So it's just also fascinating. Everybody here is going, wow. Yep. Let's see what I want. What else? I had a show yesterday with a wonderful lady who works with stones. And I've known her for a number of years, and I finally got her to come on. And she was saying that I think because she works with stones so deeply and knows a lot about it, and that's her job, so to speak, and they work for her so well. she said one day she was standing like at the kitchen sink or somewhere, something like that. And she said that she was looking at what she was doing, and she was also transported to Italy, and she was on a street somewhere, and she was seeing things around her, and she didn't want to move because she was enjoying it. But so when you said that, we may start remembering our past lives, that was but I'm guessing that she probably could learn them all, because do you believe that the stones enhance us as well with their vibrational energy? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, and I've done a great deal of work with crystals, and they do raise your vibration. They do raise your frequency. And as you begin to move that, and you begin to change that, and you begin to move into your heart center, into a state of bliss charged love, you begin to activate, as I mentioned, you begin to activate multiple layers of your DNA.
Yeah.
Those all begin to work together. So
that's fascinating. So Bob, what brought you to this this type of work, I guess? What have you always done it for years, or were you waiting?
I've done it for about 15 years. I was first, I was at kind of a mind, body, spirit expo years ago. And a world-class reader was there, and he was published and so on. And so I attended his event. And I listened to him. He was fascinating. And there were several things that struck me. One is that time is not linear within the higher dimensional scales and so on. So I decided that this is something I really wanted to look into. It was the following year that another reader from the Akashic Record Consultants International was at a similar expo. I connected with her. She was a teacher. So I entered their program. At first, you learn how to read my records, and then you do an internship. You go through another program, and then you learn how to read the records of other people. So,
did that blow your mind when you were able to do that? Number one, for yourself, and then for others.
Yeah, for myself, and I had a reason. At the time, I had a lot of really challenging professional and personal relationships. And so I wanted to go into the records. I kind of wanted to see, what was the nature of this. In fact, some relationships were so bad, I thought, why in the world would my soul want to reconnect with these people? So it's one of those questions we often ask ourselves.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I discovered that I was able to get to why that was. And with that understanding, what it did was shift my energy. It shifted my perspective. And in some cases, that there was a healing. There was kind of the new understanding brought about a healing of the heart.
Sure. Wow, that's just amazing. So,
very cool.
Anne-Marie, you want to say?
I said that's very cool.
I know it is. It really is. It's like, I've had people work with me, past life regressionists, before I, had Bob do that. And that was fascinating. And of course, you've done my karma astrologically. And all of it are just like pieces of a puzzle that we're putting together in order to understand ourselves more and our relationships with others and the world in general. Yeah. So, it's just, wow, everybody, there's a lot of people in the chat that have had a reading with you and enjoyed it so much. And that's really nice to know, because, sometimes we think, well, I don't know. No, you probably read hundreds of people here from the YouTube community.
I bet you have,
yeah. It's nice to see. It's nice to see many of these people.
Absolutely. So I asked you earlier, there was when psychics or mediums sometimes, or channelers, or whatever you want to call it, when they go into a trance or work with energies, they can't always remember what they even said or what they saw, because they're in that energy. And so I said, do you feel like you've remembered any? And you said, yes, you remember it because you see images. You see images, and not of everybody, but I said, what about some of the more exceptional or interesting ones?
Yes, that's exactly right. when I'm doing the records, I'm kind of in a state of dual consciousness. So
Uh-huh.
one part of my consciousness is in the records, and the other part is still that analytical part of my mind that guides me in terms of interpreting it or interpreting
Mhm.
the information, uh, and asking the questions
Mhm.
and moving the appropriate questions forward. But yeah,
Right.
oftentimes, depending upon how dramatic the image is, I will remember that after the fact, and sometimes I'll remember that years after the fact.
Years after. Right. So you want to give us a couple? I'd be interested to know. And I've obviously, because you're not giving anybody's name, so that's not a problem. But what would you like to share with us about it?
Well, many of the light workers that are listening today have been shamans in past lifetimes,
Oh,
and
makes
it
sense.
hasn't been an easy go. And I'm thinking of an image where within the indigenous people within the Southwest, a shaman for one tribe was attacked and captured by another tribe. Well, the thing that they did is they assassinated or they executed him, because the
Oh,
working assumption is that the shaman had supernatural powers that in fact he might be able to leverage against them. So
uh-huh.
he had to be executed, and it was that method. It was a violent death.
Oh,
So that would
um,
be.
yeah.
But
Is
there
that
there
must be difficult to see those kinds of things? Yeah.
well, I'm the observer, so
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah.
it might be difficult for the person that's remembering it at that point in
Right.
time. But
Right.
that's part of clearing the trauma and clearing the Akash. So,
Okay.
and you don't
Okay. Yeah.
necessarily experience all of the trauma that occurred.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So I have a question here from Michelle Mybell. She says, "Do Akashic records only see our past? Is there anything else that they see?" I guess is what she's asking.
Future,
Uh,
possibly.
Sometimes we can see the future or future lifetime, or the soul's intent for a future lifetime. There might
Uh-huh.
be a number of things that you're doing in this lifetime that will prepare you for
The
what it
next
is
one.
you decide to do next lifetime.
Um, some of the folks here, let's see, MK Karen was told that she was a shaman, and it was hard for her to digest. And I think that might be because um, we don't understand what that means, I guess. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the shamans, oftentimes throughout history, have been they're the people that are exiled to the edge of the community.
Right,
uh,
right,
the community or the indigenous people saw that they needed to be around because they would heal the sick, tell them
right.
when to plant the crops, interpret star signs, and that kind of a thing. But at
Hmm.
the same time, that community might not have been comfortable with the person.
Right. Because if they can see, then maybe they know what I'm doing, maybe, or what I will do, or I would say
Yeah,
probably fear of death or bad news. Yeah.
but generally throughout history, the shamans have been the ones that have been connected with spirit and
Hmm.
connected with earth
Hmm.
energies. And so they have their perspective would have been of the grander reality and the nature of our being.
Right. Right.
It's just that I think they were feared.
Well, it reminds me of the witches, right? A lot of people just, used herbs and other things, these women, and they were all persecuted, um, because of what they were perceived to be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right, and that has actually come up in a number of readings.
Oh,
Someone
okay.
that worked with earth energies or worked with crystals or worked with herbs, that they were considered to be working with supernatural powers,
Right.
and
Yep.
so they were feared from that perspective.
Sure. Yep. Connie said some shaman were considered witchcrafters in indigenous communities. So it was the basic boogeyman syndrome here for both of them. I remember hearing a story once that said if you were convicted of being a witch, they would tie you to a board and put you in the water. And if you died, then you were a witch. And if you lived, if you lived, you were a witch. And if you died, oh, well, the wrong person, Either way, you're out of here, They got what they wanted. Oh, my. Wow. Anybody have any other questions for our wonderful guests here? You did say recently that I guess Anne Marie also validated your starseed origin, and that to me is fascinating.
Yeah, Ellie and I did a reading actually, and prior to meeting with Ellie, I'd gone into my own records and discovered that I was a Syrian. I was from Sirius.
Uh-huh.
And after the fact, she did my chart, and she was
Anne Marie. Yeah, Anne Marie. Yeah. Uh-huh.
She was able to confirm that. So, and that I enjoyed that and appreciated that, and I appreciated the additional material that you sent me after the fact, because who are Assyrians? What were they? What were their attributes, and that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of that material I resonated with, and so. It's kind of one of those moments where it's confirmation and you feel a grounding and that kind of thing.
Sure. Sure. So if anyone ever asks you if you're serious, you can always say absolutely.
Right. I am.
That's right. You are.
Maybe too serious.
Too serious. I think you told me, Anne Marie, that I was from Hydra.
Well, you know what? I looked at your chart recently again, and you have more Andromeda than you do.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
Yeah, I was like looking. I was like, well, I mean, the conjunctions are just
Close.
Within minutes of each other. Yeah. So,
right.
but you have a lot more connections to Andromeda with your other planets and things, and so so that's definitely more prominent.
So when I was in high school of my freshman year, there was a nerdy kid who absolutely adored me and wanted to tell me how much he cared for me. So he sent me like a poem at that time. And I didn't want to, I was like, I like you. You're a nice guy, but you're not my type, But anyway, he's talked about the stars and he said, some are as bright as Andromeda. And when you brought that up earlier, it's like I remembered that.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, maybe he was from there too, and he just was so I don't know. There's some silly things you remember.
Yeah.
You don't really know why you remember them, but that must have really done. Yeah.
Well, your Venus has a connection to Andromeda, and Venus is love.
The love bug. Oh my God. Wow. So I'm wondering, and maybe both of you could, if do we recognize those starseed? Do you think we recognize those starseed matches? You know what I mean? Like people that probably came from our planet?
You're going to recognize the people that you've had past lives with here on Earth will be very familiar with you.
Okay.
Or to you. And you may recognize starseeds. The fact that I was from Sirius doesn't mean that I was not a Pleiadian or a Lyran before that.
No, right. You definitely have Lyran, a lot of Lyran.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so there's kind of a whole new frontier in terms of this galactic history and our galactic journey. And so that's where I'd like to move my abilities to.
Absolutely.
The galactic records of a person. So.
Because now you can read them, and because of the shift.
From where you're from. So, for example, I knew you came from Minneapolis, ended up in Chicago, but I can't connect with the fact that you had years in LA before that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I get you.
So
Yep.
that's the easiest analogy I can create.
Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
I do know that you flew from, Minneapolis International and landed at O'Hare. That part I could connect with. So
Oh, wow. That's funny.
I think there
Yeah.
were some questions related to our relationship with aliens. And yeah, we have a lot of space brothers and sisters.
Uh-huh.
I think
Yep.
I've mentioned before that us humans are the new kids on the block. And the
You can
Lyrans,
tell.
they're the oldest. And so we're talking about millions of years here. So
Right. Right. God, that's wonderful. I remember you telling some of the others that I've heard, Andrea and some of the others, 18, I don't know, was it like could it be 18 million years ago or 18,000 years ago that
yeah.
you've been able to go back to for some of these folks? Yeah.
Well, in terms of lifetimes on Earth, Lemuria was colonized by the Pleiadians about 200,000 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Okay.
not uncommon for someone in terms of Earth lifetimes to have
Mhm.
been on Lemuria, or for that matter, Atlantis, like 50,000
Right.
or 90,000 years ago.
Uh-huh.
So
So on these lifetimes are nothing but a tiny drop in the ocean. We think this is the most important one, but really it isn't.
yeah, if you thought you were old before, you're
I
really
know. I got you beat, everybody. That's awesome. Butterfly Kisses. If Bob sends you a Zoom invitation, you don't have to really. I don't think you have to set up a Zoom account. I think you just can go to that. Is that right?
Yeah. If you don't Zoom, obviously we can do a reading over the phone.
Over the phone. Yeah.
And in terms of the Zoom technology, I simply send you a link and you can click on it. So if you have a smartphone, tablet, iPad, or whatever, you can simply click on that.
Well worth the try.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's very nice to connect with the energy of that person. If you're able to see them, it's nice. Yeah. Chris says to achieve the very best reading, is it better done in person? And of course, a lot of people can't do it in person because you don't live around where they are. But she says FaceTime or phone. And you've done them before though, face to face in person?
Yeah, I started actually doing them in person.
Okay.
And in fact, people would actually fly up to me and we'd sit down and we'd do that.
Wow.
And of course, that has kind of, COVID changed all of that, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So we gravitated to the Zoom platform. And I have to tell you that in the past 18 months that my experience with Zoom is such that it's virtually the same as in person. The energy is the same, the dynamic is the same. And so Zoom is
wonderful. Fun. We all make do when we have to in times of change, but we got to be really grateful for the technology that we have now in order to do that. This would never have been possible, even in the 90s or the early 2000s. There'd be no way. So, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. MK Karen wonders, what are the average amount of lives here on Earth, if there is one?
That's a really good question. I have done readings for people that have had under 100 lifetimes and other people that have had over 1,000 lifetimes. But one of the things to bear in mind is the fact that it depends what we decide to take on in any given lifetime.
Right.
It's about our growth in soul's perfection.
Uh-huh.
And in terms of the three-dimensional experience, I did a reading for a person who had less than 100 lifetimes, but he was an extremely evolved person spiritually. Ooh. And in service to other people. And so he had simply, his three-dimensional experience was someplace else as opposed to being on Earth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We also have to bear in mind that even as of the 1800s, the average lifespan was only about 32 years. And so
yes.
we tended to go through a lot of lifetimes.
Yes.
And it depends upon how much we decide to load our tray up in any given lifetime.
Yeah, we don't tend to think of, if you live to 40, you were old at you know in the past. Yeah.
Sure,
And
yeah. If you were 25 years old or 20 years old, you were middle-aged.
middle
So,
age. We should tell our 20-year-olds that now. Half of them can't even do anything on their own. That's
no,
funny.
they were grandparents at 30. So
At 30. Yeah. Oh, wow.
sure.
Yes, very true. Very true. So, Anne Marie, I want to tag this into your work, and that is you can also tell the past lives from the chart that you do, and you can, I'm guessing, I think that this is true, that you can also tell what we're here to do in some way. What, does that planetary planet, in this or that tells us?
Yes,
Okay.
there's certain factors in the chart that will indicate what your goal is in this lifetime. And
Okay.
as far as when I don't, in the chart, I don't see how many past lives you've had. I see what's imperative to this particular incarnation, and so the past lives that connect
To
with
it.
your mission in this lifetime. And so I
Okay.
get clues to that from the birth chart.
And can you also overlay like a person and their spouse and see if,
Yes.
where it conjoins? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm just starting to do that. So
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I know you did it with several of us who work together, and we're going to do some more of it. But it's so much fun. It really is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
So thanks for questions. I'm sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
to address the question specifically, many of the light workers that are watching today, for the light workers, it tends to be between 300 and 500 lifetimes.
Yeah.
There's an average in there. So.
Okay.
Wow.
I think you told me mine was somewhere around 300 or something like that. And I remember being told very many years ago that I have all the information I needed, which we all do actually, because we've done it before, but that if I didn't use it, I might lose it. And I thought, that scared the crap out of me.
Wow.
I was like, I don't want to come back and be some, idiot. I want to, I don't want to lose everything I've got. But I also was told it wouldn't happen until I was older. And that seems to be the truth. So I built it up over this lifetime and now using it finally. But I'm trying to get back to some questions here. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. So Chris MK says that you were from Orion. Oh, she was from Orion and then went to Atlantis as a warrior. How wonderful. Okay, so Andrea wants to know, are there records for other galaxies?
Well, we have records. The Earth has records. Our galaxy has records. And I assume that other galaxies have records as well. So.
Okay, but you just haven't.
He hasn't done that door yet. He will.
I have to master the Milky Way first, and then we'll go.
I understand. Before you can move into other star systems. No. Oh, but the fun part is sometimes you think that there's nothing else that's you can do, or you can still learn, of course. But now look at this with the changes in the energy shift in the DNA and so on and so forth, and then bringing in that starseed information. I can imagine that probably in 20 years, maybe, or 30 years, that people will just be doing that, like they do tarot cards and other things, Yeah. That's what makes it so wonderful. Yep. Sherry says, when Anne Marie, when you and Dr. Gale read your chart, they said I was an unknown.
Yeah. That's it just doesn't show up with the planets that we have access to.
Oh.
It's the connections. It's a star system that that hasn't been discovered yet. So
oh my,
Bob might be able to answer that question though for you. So
okay, do you have that happen, Bob, where people you can't clue into where they were from,
their origination?
In years past, I have not been able to connect with that in some cases.
Right. Uh-huh.
And in some cases, they were not from the Milky Way. At least in one case, they were from another galaxy, and I was not
Uh-huh.
able to connect with that.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay.
I just noticed Chris's comment, and she had 285 lifetimes. Well, Chris is certainly a light worker.
Yeah.
And as I said before, it just simply means that you took on more in any given lifetime.
Uh-huh.
They're evolving more quickly. So,
Okay. So actually, because they're even here in the chat, there are lots of light workers, as you said, because they're trying to improve their knowledge and work on their lifetime, I guess.
yeah, it's the perfection of the soul. And so,
Mm.
as I
Oh,
mentioned, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we at some point in time decided collectively that we would experience duality, primarily to accelerate the process.
mhm.
And the thing was to bring light and raise the vibration of Earth. So
Wonderful. Marlene, you can have a reading with Bob, or Anne Marie can pull your chart. If you contact her, she'll talk to you about what you can do. She would need your birth date and where you were born and the time you were born. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have a problem finding that, but I really think if you go to join Ancestry for the trial, find your birth certificate in there, and then you can always cancel your Ancestry if ancestry.com. I have had the best luck with them. And between them and the DNA project that I did when I sent in my sample for them, and what they told me about myself was uncanny, different things that that I'm averse to, or different propensities I might get. Like it said something, this was the most, I shared this with students because it was so funny. My DNA occurs in most people who die before 11 a.m. I'm like, okay, everybody, if I'm not in class, I'm not here anymore, especially if it's an 11 o'clock class,
Well, it's a fact that the greatest number of heart attacks occur at like 8 o'clock Monday morning.
Yes, I knew it was Monday.
That was the medical fact. So
it's our resistance to the work week. Don't you think that case of the Mondays? So Celtic Seer, what is the best use of reading the Akashic records?
It gives you a grounding in terms of how you set this lifetime up. It gives you a basis for some of the challenges, some of the lessons. But it's also, you can begin to think of the records as a place to look for the very positive lifetimes.
Right, right.
And so it begins to open you up to your magnificence. You begin to remember the things that you have mastered, you have learned, you have earned, and they're part of you as well. So.
Is Allie frozen?
We lost Allie for a minute there.
She'll be back. I think that the idea of just finding out the positives is really, and I've always thought of karma as not just what we owe, but it's an energy. And so the energy that we bring, that we're bringing with us from the past, it's not just a negative thing. It can also be a positive thing. So I think, finding out the positives in the Akash would be definitely a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, I think that karma has been described as the engine of reincarnation. It's one of the things that compels us to come back.
Yeah.
But you're right. The life lessons, the growth, that type of thing is all within that as well. So.
Yeah. I like seeing the positives in things. I'm always finding the positive.
One of the questions I saw in the comments here is that, can I tell if it's a last lifetime? Ooh. And yes, many light workers are in their last lifetime within the 3D. So that's not to say that they might not come back, but more likely than not, they'll come back at the time of the shift or just after the shift. So.
Mm-hmm. I can tell in a birth chart, like if you have a lot of things that are at the final degrees in a sign, that means that you're closing up a cycle. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's your last lifetime, but it says that you're closing up a cycle that you've been here learning or working on. And then if you have a lot of things at beginning degrees, you're starting a new cycle. And, rarely are we going to finish a cycle in one lifetime. It takes, and who knows where that next experience will be.
Sure. How does your chart, how does that relate to what is referred to as a natal chart?
The natal chart, the birth chart is the same thing. And then, the starseed report that I get, I'm putting in the same information into a program that then connects the stars to your planets and even like if they're conjunct or connecting in another way. And that'll tell me if you incarnated there or if you just had experiences there or actually interacted with beings from there.
Oh, I see. So in other words, it's another layer that you've added on to the information that you have in the natal chart. That's interesting.
Yeah. And it I guess like most readers, when I'm looking at it, I start to get the story, it starts filtering in and I can read the story from the details. So hopefully Allie's coming back.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope the technical problem's not permanent.
No, she'll be back because we can't end it without her. She has to come back and end the show or we'll be here forever.
Well, we can keep talking.
Yeah, we can just keep talking. Exactly.
Andrea Galvin has a question. Individual souls always maintain freedom of choice in terms of soul direction. We have free will at all levels of our being. So we may choose not to incarnate. We may choose to evolve and grow in other ways. But there's a long waiting line for Earth. So for some reason, Schoolhouse Earth happens to be the popular choice at the moment.
Really? That's funny. I don't know. I have the view of, I'd rather try somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know if that's reflective of my experience here or not, but try somewhere else.
Well, we're going through a transitional time. So.
There you are.
So sorry.
Thank you. We're going through a transitional time.
We're going through a transitional time, and there's an old order of energy which is dying hard. And so we're experiencing these crazy times, and it brings on a great deal of uncertainty. I mean, just the fact that our government doesn't seem to be working right now, that's a leadership position, and there's so much uncertainty just within that. Mm-hmm. And so the people, I think, are really seeking higher levels of information. So they're seeking information from people who can provide them information from the tarot or astrology or the Akash.
Right. So. Absolutely. Sorry, I just went to Andrometer for a few minutes.
Good for you.
So Chris MK said, and this could be other people because they've never had this done before. She said the hardest part was knowing what questions to ask. And I probably could say I had the same thing. Some people wondered if you can tell if it's their last lifetime.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I can get a read on it if it's their last lifetime. Many of the light workers, it's their last lifetime within the 3D.
Uh-huh.
They're here to clean some things up. They're here to and bring light to the planet at this time.
Yep.
But more likely than not, they're going to incarnate on the other side of the shift or at the time of the shift. So
I also think that a lot of people who, I don't know how to say it nicely, but who bailed out by dying from COVID, basically just decided they weren't interested in staying here anymore. And I don't want to make it sound cruel to people who've lost people from COVID, but sometimes we know these things in our soul level and we just say, I've had enough of this place. You think that's probably true?
Well, yeah, if we transition, that's a decision at the soul level.
Uh-huh.
That
Absolutely.
the person has learned what they needed to learn, or the soul has decided that, based on the potentialities of what the person is doing, what they believe, and so on,
Hmm.
that nothing else is going to be accomplished.
Sure.
So,
Connie asks how much the reading is.
a 1 hour reading is $130. If people have a lot of questions, it's a 1.5 hour reading, which is $190.
Okay. Thank you. Renee said, if you guys know the answer to this, you may win the Nobel Prize. I don't know. Why do so many of us feel we don't belong here? It might be the starseed connection. I don't know. What do you
It
guys
is
think?
the starseed
It
connection.
is. Okay.
And Anne, of course, I'm sure you would like to comment on that. But yeah, the thing to remember too is that we have all of these experiences within the Akash in terms of, and specifically within our DNA as well.
Uh-huh.
We have Pleiadian DNA in us. We have Arcturian DNA within us. We even have reptilian DNA within us. And so, so we might not feel comfortable here.
Yeah.
And I think that 3D is for those, like if we've had many Earth lifetimes, then we've adjusted more. But if this is like a more recent incarnation from a different star system, then this 3D is going to be harder on those people that have, that have not been here hundreds of times already on Earth.
Right.
So I think that can definitely impact some people.
Yeah, so some of us are suffering from the karma of a regular past life, and some of us are still integrating our starseed DNA and what that all means.
Yeah.
No wonder we get stressed out and don't feel like we belong here. It's like throwing everything, into the bucket, So,
But also the energy, like Bob's saying, with the government and with just the tension of the world as it's transitioning itself. I think being here during that, no matter what other factors we bring into this lifetime, I think that is just hard in itself. And
sure. Yeah.
So it could be an experience of wanting to get out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Butterflies Are Free said, and I always thought that we couldn't remember our past lives because we got enough to deal with in this one. But I think that it's interesting that the children, as they come over from, when they're, I don't know, 1 to 5 or whatever, they can remember it if you ask them. A lot of them can. So.
That's very true. Their energy matrix are, they're different than ours. Yeah, it's just remarkable. I mean, I've watched documentaries on children. There's a group in the United Kingdom that you can put blindfolds on them, hand them a book, and they can read the book perfectly. And so they have levels of their DNA that are already activated.
Yeah.
For us, for an old like dinosaur from myself, it was a evolution process to raise my energy and raise my frequency. So
yeah, whenever I get with a child that's somebody, I wouldn't go up to somebody else's kid and ask questions, but if I ever had a child around me that I would say, do you remember where you came from, or do you remember where that kind of thing. And I've had such interesting conversations, including, and I mention it many times because one of my friends had her son in the back seat of her car and in a baby seat, and I'm probably 3 years old, and he was looking very interestingly at his hands, and she's like, what's wrong, Michael? And he said, well, I was a different color last time. So, I think sometimes things like, you just really need to listen, to what these kids are saying, because they're going to tell you what they know and so on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. Yes, we did answer the. Oh, yes, Andrea, you're right. The government is stuck in 3D. Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, stuck in energy, stuck in 3D, but stuck in a very low energy.
Uh-huh.
You've seen our representatives that don't vote their consciousness relative to our best interests. What they're doing, everything is a big political gain. And
Oh,
so,
I know. Yeah.
So it's unfortunate right now.
It really is. Anything about the blood type that you guys know? Anything? Maybe this is not your purview, so if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But I wondered if you, if you know.
Yeah, I do not know that. I don't know if there is that level of correlation. So
I do think, though, that we're going to, at some point, be able to tell. I mean, because when you think about the DNA and how much junk DNA that we have, I think it's just that they haven't determined that they can tell what it is yet. And then so I think at some point that will be information that we will have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who knows when? I mean, when Pluto gets into Aquarius is all about technology. And so who knows what's going to happen then?
Well, that's true. It's the RNA. It's that 95% junk portion of our DNA that is actually listening to, or it's impacted. It's affected by the ethereal aspects of our DNA. So they're listening to these other layers, the energetic layers of our DNA. And that's how our consciousness, or that's why we can shift physically our body with what it is that we're thinking in terms of consciousness. So
I think it's interesting that it was mentioned in the chat that when they, I think it was Renee said when she was in elementary school, she was sitting there sort of like, I don't belong here. She's looking around and said, I'm from somewhere more important than this. I think that's fabulous.
I was having lunch at a restaurant with one of my friends, and she had her 3-year-old there. And her 3-year-old was waving to Mr. Green Jeans on the other side of the room. And of course, there was no Mr. Green Jeans standing there. So we experienced those things. So you're right. The diamond children, the crystal children, they're wired differently.
Wow. That's just amazing. All right, here's one more. So let's just tie this up because we're almost at an hour. And so, Chris, in the future, what do you foresee reading the record? Any for mental health, or do you believe in, as you are also evolving in your work, that we'll be able to tell, why people? Well, I don't know. I'm going to just drop it there. Any thoughts?
In terms of mental health. One of the things that I can tell now, whether it was the soul's intent for you to experience that, why take on that tour of duty? It might have been that the soul simply wanted to experience so that in later this lifetime or possibly another lifetime, they might be working as a healer or a therapist to work with that group of people. But having the experience of depression or mental health, you have this visceral connection to it and what it is.
Yep. Wow. Well, we really just touched upon so many things, and there's so much more. But I hope everybody, if you're interested, Bob has a website that I've put up for you. And of course, Anne Marie's here on YouTube. Bob is not on YouTube, but we love having him here.
We bring him on as often as we can.
We bring him on when we can. And I saw that Nancy Jean was here as well earlier. So, you just get, and you're just one of us, Bob. You're one of us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Part of the family.
That's right. So thank you, Mary and Andrea, again, for bringing Bob to this community.
Yes. We need to give Andrea her signal.
That's right. She's a lilac.
I love that.
Yes.
That's cool.
That's right.
Talk about recognition.
Yeah, what she brought forward on the avians is quite interesting.
Yes, that was amazing.
I know. Cool. I know, definitely. And it's just popping up everywhere, the starseed thing and the past life thing. So God bless you, Bob. Anne Marie, thank you too.
It's been a pleasure, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be part of the synergy of this community. So
Yes.
it's wonderful that we see the convergence and the synergy of this really wonderful community. So happy to be part of it.
I agree.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Anne-Marie.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you.
Valley.
Thank you, Bob. Have a great weekend, everybody.